Today, we're going to do something a little different. We are traveling back in time, specifically to the early 1970s, to a public school in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
I want you to picture a student there, a sixth grader. Let's call him Tim. Now, Tim is not your average kid. He is part of a gifted program. But he's not just smart. He is, let's say, intense.
Intense is putting it lightly. We're talking about a level of focus that most adults never achieve, let alone a 12-year-old.
Right. So while other kids are maybe treating baseball cards or playing tag or, worrying about cooties, Tim is building things. He builds this device called an infinity cube. It's this battery-powered contraption with rotating mirrors that creates this optical illusion of an endless tunnel. And he tells a visitor, a writer named Julie Ray, who is profiling the school, that he modeled it after one he saw in a store that cost $22. But Tim looks at her and says, mine was cheaper.
That is such a telling detail. Mine was cheaper. I mean, you can already see the obsession with value and cost efficiency right there in middle school.
It gets better. Tim isn't just building cheap optical illusions. He's also running a statistical analysis on his teachers.
Oh, no.
He develops a survey to rate the sixth grade faculty, not on popularity or kindness, but on their teaching methods. He is literally graphing their relative performance ratings.
Which is frankly terrifying behavior for a child. Imagine being a teacher and finding out a sixth grader is running a performance review on you based on statistical analysis.
Absolutely. So this writer, Julie Ray, she's fascinated. She asks one of the teachers about Tim. She asks, what grade level is he performing at?
Yeah.
And the teacher pauses and says, I really can't say, except that there's probably no limit to what he can do, given a little guidance.
And that teacher was more right than she could have possibly imagined. Because Tim, as you've probably guessed by now, wasn't named Tim at all.
Yeah.
His name was Jeff Bezos.
Exactly. And today, we're doing a deep dive into the book that chronicles exactly how that kid with the infinity cube grew up to build the infinite store. We are talking about the everything store, Jeff Bezos and the Age of Amazon by Brad Stone.
This is really one of the definitive business biographies of our time. And our mission for this deep dive is very specific.
Right.
We want to move past the headlines we see today about Amazon, the drone deliveries, the massive market cap, the Blue Origin rockets, the fact that it shows up on your doorstep every day. We want to go back to the mud.
The mud.
The mess. The fever dreams. The chaos. The moments where this company was literally days away from running out of cash. We want to understand the DNA of the beast before it became the beast.
So we're going to decode the Jeffisms, his mental models. We're going to look at the failures that almost sank the ship. And we're going to look at a culture that is, frankly, brutal.
It's a story about a singular, often ruthless vision colliding with the chaotic reality of the internet. It's not just a success story, it's a survival story.
So let's unpack this. We start, surprisingly, not in a garage in Seattle, but on Wall Street.
Right. I think a lot of people have this image of Bezos as this scrappy underdog from day one, tinkering in a garage like Hewlett and Packard.
Yeah, the classic Silicon Valley myth.
But before Amazon, he was a vice president at D.E. Shaw. And this wasn't just any investment bank. It was a quantitative hedge fund. It was a place for, as they called them, generalists with high IQs.
Generalists with high IQs. That sounds a bit elitist.
Oh, it's incredibly elitist. It was secretive. D.E. Shaw was one of the first firms to use heavy computer algorithms to spot financial patterns that no human could see. They were arbitrage traders. They weren't looking at the value of a company. They were looking at math.
And Bezos fit right in.
Perfectly. He was the youngest VP there, and he was analytical about absolutely everything, even his personal life.
Oh, you're talking about the women flow?
I am. This is classic Bezos. He wanted to find a wife. Most people will go to a bar or ask friends for a setup. Bezos, being a quant, decided he needed to increase his deal flow, or in this case, his women flow.
So what did he do?
He actually signed up for ballroom dancing classes.
Because he loved dancing.
Not at all. He calculated that ballroom dancing classes had a high ratio of women to men. It was the most efficient way to increase his exposure to N+ women.
That is romantic in a spreadsheet kind of way.
It's purely analytical. It's an optimization problem. And that's the key to understanding him. He kept a sleeping bag in his office at D.E. Shaw.
Really?
Yeah, he kept egg crate foam on his windowsill in case he needed to sleep there. He was already displaying that legendary stamina that would define Amazon later. He doesn't separate work and life. He separates productive and unproductive.
But then something happens in 1994. He sees a number. A specific statistic.
The statistic that launched 1,000 ships, or in this case, billions of cardboard boxes. He was browsing the primitive internet of the early 90s, and he read a report stating that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year.
2,300%. Let's just pause on that. It's hard to wrap your head around that number.
It's an anomaly. In the physical world, things don't grow that fast.
Yeah.
You don't see car sales or grocery shopping growing at 2,000%. That's viral growth. It's biological.
And Bezos saw that.
He realized that this wasn't just a trend. It was a mathematical impossibility to ignore. He looked at that growth curve and realized he had to find a business plan that made sense in that context. He went to his boss, David Shaw, and they actually discussed this idea of the everything store.
So the idea started at the hedge fund.
Ideally, yes. An internet company that served as an intermediary between customers and manufacturers for everything.
Yeah.
But David Shaw told him, look, this is a great idea, but you have a great job. You're paid well. Let someone else do it.
And this leads us to probably the most famous mental model in the Bezos toolkit.
The regret minimization framework.
This is a concept that I think every listener should apply to their own life. It's a tool for cutting through the noise of indecision.
So how does it work?
Bezos projected himself forward to age 80. He imagined looking back on his life from that vantage point.
Okay.
And he asked himself a simple question. Will I regret walking away from a Wall Street bonus in 1994? The answer was no. At 80, a bonus from 40 years ago is, irrelevant.
Right.
But he knew with 100% certainty that he would regret missing out on the internet revolution. He would regret not participating in this thing that was growing 2,300% a year.
So the fear of regret outweighed the fear of failure.
Precisely. If he tried and failed, he could live with that at 80. He could say, I gave it a shot. But if I never tried, that what if would haunt him. It's a way of stripping away short-term fears, like losing your salary or looking foolish, and focusing on the long-term narrative of your life. So he quits. And we get the famous origin story. He and his wife, Mackenzie, fly to Texas, borrow a Chevy Blazer from his dad, and drive to Seattle. Mackenzie is driving, and Jeff is in the passenger seat, literally typing the business plan on a laptop as they cross the country.
And typing up revenue projections that turned out to be wildly inaccurate, by the way.
Oh, really?
They were actually far too conservative in the long run, but seemed crazy at the time.
And now they needed a name. And they didn't start with Amazon.
No. The first choice was Cadabra, like abracadabra.
Which sounds a little magical. We make books appear.
Until Bezos' lawyer pointed out a critical flaw. He said, Jeff, over the phone, cadabra sounds a lot like cadaver.
As in a dead body. Not exactly the vibe you want for a new consumer brand.
Definitely not. Welcome to Cadaver. Here are your books.
So what else did they consider?
They also considered MakeItSo.com, which is a Star Trek reference. Bezos is a huge Trekkie, specifically Captain Picard. But the one that really stuck, and that actually still works today, is Relentless.com.
Relentless. That feels very foreshadowing.
It captures the spirit perfectly. And here's a fun Easter egg. If you type Relentless.com into your browser right now, go ahead and try it. It still redirects you to Amazon.
He kept the domain.
He did. But eventually, he settled on Amazon, Earth's largest river, for Earth's largest selection. And, crucially, it started with A.
Why did A matter?
Because, back in the early web days, lists were often alphabetical. Being at the top of the list was a form of SEO before SEO even existed.
Smart. So they get to Seattle, they rent a house in Bellevue, and we enter the garage era.
And this is where the mythology meets the reality. It really was a garage. They had a pot-bellied stove in the middle of it for heat. But the symbol that comes out of this era, the one that defines Amazon's culture even today, is the door desk.
Tell us about the door desk. This comes up all the time in Amazon lore.
So Bezos needed desks for the few employees he had. Shokha Khan, the technical co-founder, and a couple others. They went to look at office furniture, and it was expensive.
Of course.
Bezos looked at the doors for sale at Home Depot. Solid wood doors were much cheaper than desks. So he bought doors and 4x4 posts and nailed legs onto the doors.
That sounds uncomfortable.
It was. They were wobbly, they were rough. But it was a statement. It became a totem of frugality. Even when they became a billion-dollar company, they kept using door desks, or at least high-end versions of them, to remind themselves that they spend money on things that matter to customers, not on things that make employees comfortable.
That is some serious commitment to the bit.
It wasn't a bit to him. It was survival. They were operating on a shoestring. In those early days, every time an order came in, a bell would ring on their computers.
Like a cash register.
Exactly. It was exciting. They would
Yeah.
all gather around to see if they knew the customer. Oh, look, it's someone from Ohio. Do we know anyone in Ohio?
Right.
But remember, that 2,300% growth. Within a few weeks, the orders were coming in so fast that the bell was ringing constantly. It was just a solid noise of ringing. It was driving them crazy. They had to turn it off.
I want to pause here and dig into the financials of this early period because Amazon was doing something very specific with their cash flow that I think is misunderstood. They were operating on a negative operating cycle. Can you explain that? Because usually negative in finance sounds like a disaster.
In this case, negative is the holy grail. It is the secret engine that allowed Amazon to grow. Think about a traditional bookstore. They buy a book from a publisher. They pay for it. They put it on a shelf, and it sits there.
Right.
Maybe for a month, maybe for 6 months. Their cash is trapped in that book until a customer buys it.
Right. Inventory costs money.
Amazon slipped the script. Because they didn't hold much inventory initially, they would receive an order from a customer and get paid instantly by credit card. Boom, cash in the bank.
Okay.
Then they would order the book from the distributor and ship it. But, and this is the key, they wouldn't pay the distributor for 30 or 60 or sometimes 90 days.
So they are holding the customer's cash for 2 months before they have to pay their bills.
Exactly. They were operating on other people's money. They had the cash from the customer long before they had to part with it. This gave them a massive float-free cash flow that they could use to hire engineers, buy servers, and expand, all without taking on debt.
They were essentially borrowing from their suppliers interest-free to fund their own growth.
That's it. It's the reason they survived when other dot-coms died. They had liquidity.
But they weren't alone. And this leads us to the first major villain in the Amazon story, Barnes & Noble.
The Goliath. The Riggio brothers, Len and Steve Riggio, ran Barnes & Noble. They were the kings of bookselling. They finally noticed this little startup in Seattle and decided, okay, that's enough.
So they invited Bezos to dinner in Seattle.
They did.
This feels like a scene from a mob movie. Nice bookstore you got there. Shame if something happened to it.
It has exactly that vibe. They have a steak dinner. And the Riggio brothers basically tell Bezos, look, we admire what you've done, but we are going to launch a website and we are going to crush you.
And their internal project name for this was The Book Predator.
The Book Predator. Subtlety was not their strong suit.
Not at all.
No. They expected Bezos to fold, to maybe sell the company to them. But here is the fascinating thing about Bezos' reaction. Most people would be terrified. The biggest player in the industry just threatened to wipe you out.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't scared of competitors.
Why not?
He has this mantra, you should wake up worried, terrified every morning. But don't be worried about our competitors because they're never going to send us any money. Let's be worried about our customers. He fundamentally believed that if Amazon focused on the customer experience, the competitors' actions didn't matter.
He just completely reframed the threat.
Right. And Barnes & Noble did fight dirty. Days before Amazon's IPO, B&N sued them for using the tagline Earth's largest bookstore, claiming it was false advertising because Amazon didn't have a physical store.
So what'd they say?
They said, you're not a bookstore, you're a book broker.
Did it work?
No. It actually gave Amazon more publicity. Amazon went public, raised the money, and then the strategy shifted. It went from sell books to get big fast.
Get big fast. That was the motto.
It was an imperative. Bezos realized that the internet was a land grab. It was the Wild West.
Yeah.
If you didn't claim the territory now, someone else would. So they started hiring like crazy.
And the culture. Well, it wasn't for everyone.
Not at all. The book describes the warehouse staff as a mix of freaks.
Freaks.
Yeah, they told the temp agencies, send us your freaks. You had tattoos, piercings, opera singers, people who couldn't fit in at a corporate office, this motley crew working in a warehouse packing books in a frenzy.
And the intensity was off the charts.
There's a quote Bezos loved. You can work long, hard, or smart, but at Amazon, you can't choose 2 out of 3. You had to do all 3.
There's a story about a guy named Christopher Smith who worked there. It sounds almost unbelievable.
It sums up the era perfectly. Christopher Smith was a temp-turned-manager. He was working such insane shifts, biking back and forth to the warehouse, that he completely lost track of his personal life. He had parked his station wagon near his apartment. He was so consumed by Amazon that he forgot to move it, forgot to check his mail. Eventually, he found out the car had been towed, impounded, and sold at auction.
He didn't even notice his car was stolen by the city.
He didn't notice because he was never home. And when he found out, he just shrugged and went back to work. That is the level of get big fast intensity we were talking about. It was a cult of productivity.
That brings us to the late 90s. The dot-com bubble is inflating. Amazon stock is soaring. And Bezos starts having what Brad Stone calls fever dreams.
This is the period where things get a little unhinged. The stock price made them feel invincible. Bezos started pitching ideas that were out there. He wasn't just thinking about books anymore.
Like Project Fargo.
Yes, Project Fargo was the idea of obtaining one of every single product ever manufactured. Not just books. Everything. He wanted a sample of everything on Earth.
Where would you even put that?
That's the problem. Warehousing physics doesn't support that. Then there was Project Alexandria, or Noah's Ark, which was to keep 2 copies of every book ever printed, archived forever.
It sounds like he wanted to be the librarian of the universe.
He did. And my personal favorite fever dream, helicopter delivery. He was brainstorming ideas where they would hire college students to store popular products in their apartments in Manhattan and deliver them on bicycles, or, yes, helicopters, to get things to people instantly.
It sounds chaotic.
It was. They were acquiring companies left and right. They bought Jungly, Planet All. They invested in Pets.com, Cosmo.com, Dash, all the poster children of the dot-com bust. They were burning cash like it was kindling.
But there is one detail in this spending spree that is absolutely crucial for the history of the internet.
Which one?
The Jungly acquisition.
Yes. The acquisition itself was a failure. The technology, which was supposed to help comparison shopping, didn't really work for Amazon. But through that deal, Bezos met a man named Ram Shriram. And Ram Shriram said, "Hey, Jeff, I'm advising these 2 PhD students at Stanford who are working on a search engine. You should meet them."
Let me guess. Larry Page and Sergey Brin.
The founders of Google. Because of that failed Jungle acquisition, Bezos met them and became one of the original investors in Google. He put in $250,000.
Talk about a return on investment.
That investment alone minted him a separate fortune worth billions. It's a reminder that even in the chaos of fever dreams, Bezos had an incredible eye for fundamental shifts in technology.
But not everyone was impressed with Amazon's spending. There was a guy at Lehman Brothers named Ravi Surya.
Ah, Ravi Surya, the man who coined the term Amazon.bomb.
He wrote a report claiming Amazon was going to run out of cash, right?
Yes, Ravi was a convertible bond analyst. He looked at Amazon's credit, their burn rate, and their debt, and he said this is extremely weak. He predicted they would be insolvent within a year. And people listened. The stock tanked.
And Bezos was furious.
How furious? He was so obsessed with Surya's wrongness that he started using Surya's first name as a unit of measurement for error.
A Ravi.
Exactly, a Ravi. If someone made a massive mathematical error in a meeting, Bezos would say, "That's a Ravi." It shows how deeply personal he took the criticism. He didn't just want to prove him wrong. He wanted to mock the very idea of betting against Amazon.
And the chaos wasn't just on Wall Street, it was in the warehouses, too. The holiday of 1999 sounds like a nightmare.
It was Save Santa. That was the internal program name. They had promised too much. Office workers, software engineers, marketing VPs, everyone was taking graveyard shifts in the fulfillment centers just to get packages out.
Wow.
And there's this specific story about the Jigglypuffs.
The Pokemon character.
Yes. This was peak Pokemon craze. There was a missing pallet of Jigglypuff toys. The system said they had them, but they couldn't find them in the warehouse. It was causing a massive backlog called FUD, fillable unfilled demand.
Okay.
It was clogging the whole system because orders couldn't ship without the Jigglypuff.
So the whole company is held hostage by a pink balloon monster.
Basically. Finally, at 2 a.m., a search team found the missing pallet tucked away in a wrong aisle. And the relief was so high, the hysteria was so deep that the workers literally formed a conga line dancing with the Jigglypuffs.
A conga line of exhausted Amazonians holding Pokemon at 2 a.m.? That is the image of the dot-com bubble right there.
It really is. Absolute mania.
Yeah.
But then, the music stopped.
The crash. 2000, 2001.
The bubble burst. The NASDAQ collapsed. Amazon stock dropped from a high of $107 down to single digits around $6.
Wow.
Imagine that. You lose 90% of your value. Everyone is writing you off. The Amazon.bomb narrative is everywhere. And just to pile on, nature decided to intervene. The Nisqually earthquake hit Seattle.
Literally an earthquake.
While executives were reviewing a security breach, the building starts shaking violently. Chunks of the building are falling off. It feels like the apocalypse. And what does Bezos do?
What?
He puts on a hard hat, climbs on top of a car in the parking lot, and starts directing the evacuation.
That is a vivid image. A captain trying to maintain order while the world is literally crumbling around him.
It shows his coolness under pressure. But the business was crumbling too. And this is the part of the story I find most fascinating, the pivot. Because Amazon didn't just survive by cutting costs, they fundamentally changed their identity.
And it started with a meeting at Starbucks.
With a guy named Jim Sinegal.
This is a pivotal moment in business history. Jim Sinegal was the founder of Costco.
The wholesale club.
Yeah.
Now think about Amazon in the 90s. It was trying to be cool. It was trying to be MTV. It was cool tech. Costco is not cool.
No.
It's concrete floors and pallets.
Right. It's cheap hot dogs and giant jars of mayonnaise.
Bezos meets Sinegal for coffee. And Sinegal explains the Costco philosophy. He says, value trumps everything. Costco doesn't advertise. They don't have fancy displays. They have a membership fee, and they mark up products by a tiny fixed amount, usually 14 or 15%.
Okay.
They're strictly a low-price retailer. They act as a trustee for their customers, fighting to get them the lowest price.
And Bezos had an epiphany.
He realized Amazon was trying to be the wrong thing. They needed to be Costco. They needed to stop worrying about being hip and start worrying about being the cheapest.
So what did they do?
They cut prices on books and music to rock bottom. And they launched free Super Saver shipping.
Which we all take for granted now. I get annoyed if I have to pay for shipping.
But at the time, the CFO was against it. It seemed crazy to give away shipping. It eats your margin.
Right.
But Bezos realized, inspired by airline pricing tiers, that if you made customers wait a few extra days for free shipping, you could fill the trucks more efficiently. It drove volume. It locked people into the ecosystem. It was the precursor to Prime.
And then came the other big strategic shift, the marketplace, letting other people sell stuff on Amazon.
This was highly controversial. Amazon had tried auctions to beat eBay and failed miserably, so they decided, if we can't beat them, let's invite them in.
And they put a box on the main product page right next to the new Amazon item, where a third party could sell a used version or a cheaper version. But that sounds insane from a business perspective. You're inviting someone to undercut your own price on your own website.
Exactly. The publishers hated it. The buyers at Amazon, the people whose job it was to sell Amazon's inventory, hated it because it cannibalized their sales numbers. They thought Bezos was crazy.
But he insisted.
He insisted. He said it was better for the customer, and his logic was, if we don't offer the lower price, someone else will. I want them to find it here.
He was willing to hurt his own short-term sales to own the customer relationship.
Yes, and this leads to the flywheel. This is the engine of Amazon. If you understand one thing about Amazon, understand the flywheel.
It started as a diagram drawn on a napkin, right?
Yes. They call it the virtuous cycle. It's a self-reinforcing loop.
Walk us through the steps. How does it work?
It starts with lower prices and customer experience. If you have those, you get more traffic to the site.
Okay, more people visiting because it's cheap and easy.
Right. More traffic attracts more sellers, third-party merchants, because they want to reach those customers.
And more sellers means more selection.
Which improves the customer experience, which brings more traffic. But here is the kicker, the part people miss. More volume and efficiency allows Amazon to lower its cost structure.
Because they get better deals from shipping companies, they utilize servers better.
Exactly. And because they have lower costs, they can lower prices even further.
So every part feeds the next part.
And the wheel spins faster and faster. Once that flywheel gets momentum, it is incredibly hard to stop. It becomes a perpetual motion machine of growth.
That is powerful. But there was a cost to getting this wheel spinning, a human cost. We talked about the freaks in the warehouse, but the burnout rate in the executive suite was also incredibly high.
It was a bruising environment. That's the word Stone uses. Bezos is not an easy boss.
No.
He demanded total dedication, and there's some really emotional exits described in the book.
The story of Shel Kafan really stuck with me. He was the first employee, right?
He was the technical co-founder. He built the original system. He drove the U-Haul from Santa Cruz. He was the mother hen of the technology.
But he got pushed out.
As Amazon got big, Bezos started bringing in outside executives. He reorganized the company. He sidelined Kafan.
Stone describes it as the guy getting the gold watch who hasn't retired yet.
It was heartbreaking. Kafan called it a betrayal of a sacred trust. It's the classic founder's dilemma. The people who get you from 0 to 1 aren't always the people who can get you from 1 to a billion.
And Bezos was just ruthless about it.
He prioritized the company over the friendship. He moved on.
And then there's Bill Price, the VP of customer service. The story gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Oh, the phone call. This is legendary. So Bezos was obsessed with customer service metrics. He claimed hold times were too long. Bill Price said, no, the data shows they are fine.
Uh-oh.
So in the middle of a meeting with all the executives, Bezos picks up the conference room phone.
Nightmare scenario.
He calls the Amazon customer support line, and he puts it on speaker,
Hmm.
and he waits. And the room is silent. He takes off his watch and puts it on the table to track the time. 1 minute goes by.
Everyone just staring at the phone.
Staring at the phone, listening to the hold music. 2 minutes. 3 minutes.
Excruciating.
4.5 minutes of hold music. Bezos is turning red. The vein in his forehead is popping out. Finally, someone picks up, and Bezos just slams the phone down and explodes at Price. He says something to the effect of, "You are deluding yourself."
And Price didn't last long after that.
No, it's a terrifying management style, but it made a point. Anecdotal evidence, the actual experience of the customer, mattered more than the spreadsheet saying average wait time is low.
They also systematized this high standard with something called the bar raiser program. Can you explain how that works? Because I think a lot of companies have tried to copy this.
This is a really interesting hiring mechanic. They didn't want the quality of employees to dilute as they grew, a common problem in fast-growing companies called institutional torpor.
Right. B players hiring C players.
So they designated certain interviewers as bar raisers.
What power do they have?
They have veto power. Even if the hiring manager loves the candidate and the team loves the candidate, the bar raiser can say no. They were from a different department, so they have no pressure to fill the seat.
And their only job is to ask one question.
Does this person raise the average competency of the team? If the answer is no, they don't get hired.
It's designed to ensure that the 5,000th employee is just as good as the first 50.
Exactly. It keeps the talent density high.
We also have to talk about the communication style. Bezos famously banned PowerPoint.
He did. He hates bullet points. He believed PowerPoint made it too easy to hide sloppy thinking. You can put 3 bullet points on a slide and bluff your way through it.
So he instituted the 6-page narrative.
Right.
So if you want to pitch an idea in a meeting, you have to write a 6-page essay.
Yes. A proper narrative structure, verbs and sentences. And the meeting starts with everyone sitting in silence for 20 minutes reading the essay.
That sounds like a study hall.
It forces critical thinking. You have to have a beginning, middle, and end. You have to explain the why, not just the what. You have to anticipate questions. It's a very academic, rigorous approach to business.
It forces the writer to have clarity before they waste anyone's time.
Right. If you can't write it down clearly, you haven't thought it through.
And presiding over all of this is Bezos and his laugh.
The laugh. Brad Stone describes it as a cross between a mating elephant seal and a power tool.
That is a vivid description.
It is. It's a loud, startling bray. And people were split on it. Some thought it was a sign of his joy and enthusiasm. He's genuinely having fun solving problems. Others thought it was a weapon.
A weapon.
He would use it to disarm people, or sometimes to punctuate a moment of tension. It was unnerving.
So what does this all mean? We have a guy who is brilliant, visionary, but also lacks a certain amount of empathy. He's driven by mission, not by people's feelings.
There was a quote in the book from an employee. "If you're not good, Jeff will chew you up. If you're good, he will jump on your back and ride you into the ground." He wasn't trying to be mean. He was just trying to build something that lasted. He was trying to build the everything store. He viewed employees as resources to get to the mission.
So looking back, we see this transformation. From the garage with the door desks, through the insanity of the bubble and the conga lines with Pokemon, to the near-death experience of the crash, and finally to this relentless machine based on the Costco model.
It's a transition from get big fast to get our house in order. And the glue that held it all together, and the thing that I think is his greatest invention, more than the Kindle or AWS, is the philosophy of day one.
Day one. He signs his shareholder letters with that every year. It remains day one.
It's the idea that the internet is still in its infancy, that Amazon, no matter how big it gets, must act like a startup. Because day two is stasis. Day two is irrelevance. Day two is excruciating, painful decline, followed by death.
And Bezos is terrified of day two.
Absolutely terrifying.
It's a powerful philosophy. It keeps you hungry, keeps you from getting complacent.
It keeps you paranoid. In a good way. It forces you to constantly look for the next infinity cube, the next fever dream, because the moment you stop inventing, you start dying.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the everything store, it's clear that Amazon didn't just happen. It was forged. It was forged through risk, through failure, and through a refusal to accept the status quo.
And through a willingness to be misunderstood for long periods of time. That's another big Jeffism. If you are going to invent, You have to be willing to have people call you crazy like the Wall Street analysts did, like the publishers did, and just keep going because you believe the math works.
Which brings us back to that first mental model, regret minimization.
Hmm.
Bezos walked away from a safe path because he feared the regret of not trying more than he feared the failure of trying.
And that is the provocative thought I would leave our listeners with. Bezos projected himself to age 80 to make that decision.
So here's the question for you listening right now. What is the decision you're avoiding out of fear? And if you project yourself to age 80 and look back at this moment, will you regret playing it safe?
That's the question that built an empire.